Hello everyone, my name is Richa Mahajan, Assistant Professor from Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Jagannath University, Jaipur. Today my topic is what is three-point lighting. Three-point lighting is a traditional method for illuminating a subject in a scene with light source from three distinct points. The three types of lights are key light, fill light and backlight. Key light. This is the primary and brightest light source in the three-point lighting setup. It gives the scene its overall exposure. Cinematography typically position this main light slightly off to the side of the camera and the front of the subject on a light stand at a 45-degree angle to the camera, which creates shadow on the opposite side of the subject's face, giving it dimension and depth. The primary light creates the mood of a scene depending upon its position and the supplemental lights used in the overall lighting. It can create a high key image, evenly, softly lit, and atmospherically upbeat, or a low key image, high contrast, deep shadow, and very moody. Next is fill light. Mirroring the key light on the opposite side of the camera, the fill light literally fills in the shadows that the key light creates on a subject, bringing out details in the darkness. Typically, this secondary light is less bright than the key, and cinematographers control the overall feel of their shot based on how much they dim or lighten the fill light. A dim fill light, where the ratio is high, creates a high contrast film noir type of shadow, while a brighter light with a lower, more balanced ratio gives the subject a more even look. The second light is not always a light. It can be a reflector, a bounce card, a wall, or anything that bounces back some light onto the subject to fill the shadows. Together with the key light, the fill light determines the mood of the scene. Another one is backlight. The third source in this lighting technique, the backlight, also known as the rim light or hair light, shines on a subject from behind, completing the light setup. This creates a rim of light or outline around their head that pushes the subject away from the background and gives a sense of depth. Typically, cinematographers position the backlight directly behind the subject or high enough to be out of frame, opposite the key light, and pointing at the back of the subject's neck. Next is how is three-pointing lighting used? There is no set formula for how three-point lighting is used. This often depends on the scene, the subject matter, and the overall mood that a cinematographer or photographer wants to evoke. Good lighting creates a more interesting and dynamic image where the subject is seen with more dimensions and where the cinematographer has more control over shadows. The lighting setup helps bring dimension to characters. Three-pointing lighting also helps shape a subject to bring out the best or worst of them. By placing a soft key light slightly off the center with 2.1 fill ratio, a cinematographer creates a soft, flattering look that also tends to hide blemishes in the skin when your subjects are people. This soft lighting is called high key lighting and creates an optimistic, upbeat, youthful light and airy mood that is common in sitcoms and comedies. If a cinematographer opts for a higher fill ratio like 8.1, the key light cast sharp-edged shadows that contrast sharply with the light. This is low-key lighting, which creates a dramatic, mysterious, unsettling, and alienating mood and can display a range of deep negative emotions. As such, it is common in dark dramas, thrillers, horror, and the film noir. Next is what is 4-point lighting? 4-point lighting utilizes an additional background light to illuminate what is behind the subject. Unlike the backlight, which creates a ring or an outline of the subject, the background light illuminates background elements such as walls or outdoor scenery. Cinematographers use this technique to eliminate shadows cast by foreground elements onto the background or to draw attention on the background. The fourth light also helps the camera give depth to the subject. To achieve the look, the cinematographer positions a background light behind the subject, either low to the ground or on a high grid, facing toward background elements such as walls or outdoor scenery. There is 5 tips for setting up 3-pointing lighting. There are several key components to successfully setting up 3-point lighting and creating a polished professional videos. Next is establish your lights. Motivation. Before you begin settling up your lighting kit, you have to know precisely what look you want to achieve and why. Lighting setups are never random. The source of light in your scene needs to make sense based on the environment that your character exists in. Is it an overcast sky, sunset, a dark LA? Once you have established the motivation, you can proceed to place and adjust your light kit to achieve the effect. You may also want unmotivated light. In horror, having unnatural light gives the sense that something is off and unsettles viewers. You must still establish that beforehand. Number 2. Consider light source size and distance. The size of a light source relative to the subject size determines how hard, sharp, distinctive edge or soft, smooth, feathered edges your shadows will be. A smaller light source creates harder, distinct edges, while a bigger one softens the shadow. In studio lights, if you want a softer light, you place enlarging modifiers such as an umbrella, softbox, or another diffusion between the light source and the subject. Due to this relative size condition, the distance of the light source to the subject will also affect shadow softness. Softness. If you put the source closer to the subject, the shadow will be softer. The shadow will be harder if you pull the light back from them, making the relative size to the subject smaller. Consider the intensity of your light source. Brightness is the measure of a light source intensity. You measure it in luminous with a light meter. With LED lights, fluorescent light, and incandescent lights, you control the output intensity, which affects the look of your scene. Brighter light will create harsher edges and shadows. Number 4 is consider the position of your light source, where you place your lights relative to your subject, and the camera determines where shadow falls. This relates again to sensibly creating an environment. If your key light represents the sun, it should accurately reflect the angle and height of that source. How you position your fill and backlight affects whether there are deep, moody shadows or an optimistic, even light cast across your scene. Last and final is test your setup. After you have determined your lights motivation, their size, distance, intensity and position, set everything up so you can see exactly how all the lights work together and whether or not their effect is precisely what you intended it to be. If it is not, make adjustments until everything is perfect. Thank you so much. That's all for today.